My name is Steve DeZiel. I'm with EduTech North Dakota. I've been here. Whoop, I hear a little feedback. Just as you're logging in there, just make sure,
still
please.
Not getting his voice. Let's see if this is up high enough.
Give that 1 second here. Okay, so all right, so I'm with EduTech North Dakota for been here for over 5 years now. I've got a couple other ITS members with me today online to support you with answering questions and anything else you need. Kelly Rexine is online. Tyler Ward is over in Dickinson, and Jason Matthias is over in Garrison. We've got some people from DPI on today. Bonnie Weiss is here, it looks like, and it looks like Bonnie Weiss is the only one from DPI here right now. So, but there might be some other people logging in. So what we're going to do is I want to get you the updates you need to be successful with NDSA testing this year. So basically, I'm going to be presenting my screen. I've updated the SWAY from last year that everybody received for a resource, so it's got all the new information in there. And just keep in mind that that will be changing also throughout the next couple weeks. We did one webinar yesterday. This is the second one. And then I start my roadshow trainings next week for the next 2 weeks. So things will be updating, things will be changing. The link I'm going to give you for the SWAY will be changing the information in there. So just keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. So you should be seeing in a second here the SWAY presentation. Okay, so just a quick little there's our team that I just mentioned that are here today and are helping out with preparing for NDSA, getting you guys the resources and information you need. Also, if you haven't taken a look at our webpage lately, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the services, some of the things going on. There's a lot of things changing at EduTech, so just kind of be aware that I just want you to be aware of the opportunities that exist right now. So if you look at, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit there. So right now we have a lot going on with code.org. There's middle and high school professional learning programs. You can apply for those. That's going to be a 5-day training in Fargo. We had a good turnout last year. If you have interest in that, you can look into anything on the banner here. If you just click read more, you'd be able to learn more about those opportunities. And then we also have the Ask Me video program. This is where you get connected to professionals in STEM industries, and they can give a speech to your students, telling them about the opportunities in that industry and what it's like to work in that industry, what types of skills you need to work in that industry. And then we also have the Dakota Strike, the Career Expo in Fargo on April 8th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's a pretty good opportunity for grades 7 through 12. A huge career expo at the Fargo Dome. The cybersecurity conference is coming, so that if you've never been to a cybersecurity conference, there's a lot of good opportunities there to learn about cybersecurity, staying safe online, and some skills you can bring to your students and knowledge you can bring to your students from that conference. And then also our NYSERC middle school trainings are happening around the state. So if you've never taken NYSERC before and you need to teach computer science standards and skills to middle schoolers, this will be a free opportunity for you to take training and get some materials. Actually, you'll receive a microbit club kit if you take those trainings, and it's broken up into 4 different pieces throughout the next 3-4 months here. So something to look into. And then Girls Go Cyber Start is a fun free program for girls that want to learn about coding and cybersecurity. So we're doing really well. We had a lot of turnout last year in the state, and we're hoping to grow that this year. And then the NDSA preparedness training, that's what you're in today. And then the last thing is the elementary curriculum for the code.org. So a lot of things going on. This will be changing the banner here quite often with opportunities and different things going on throughout the state. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to my SWAY. So I'm going to give you this link here. If you can see that on your screen, you can take that and update the one from last year. It's a different address here. So you can bookmark that, use it as a resource and get it to staff that might not have been able to attend this, so they can go through. What we've done here is taken it, kind of everything from the portal, and put it all in one place for you to link to, and so on. And Kelly also put the link to the SWAY in the chat window. So just if you want to just quickly click on that and bookmark that page, you can also do that. So you guys have signed up for this course, and you notice this year that there was 2 different types of courses. One that was geared towards those that were new to the TIDE system, new to the testing system. So that was the webinar that happened yesterday, and this one was geared towards those that have had some experience with the testing system and just need to kind of get a brief overview, just a refresher, because this only does happen once a year, just to get the updates that happen, because things change. So that's kind of our goal today. We're not going to spend as much time as I would with the new group in TIDE in creating. We'll go over it, but a brief overview, but not quite as in depth as those that took the webinar yesterday. So part 1, we are going to talk about the important dates this year. We're going to talk about how the online reporting system has changed to what is now called Airways. Okay, so we'll talk about that change and what is happening with that. We're going to go through the user levels again and the documents for 2019, 2020. A lot of updates with the new science piece added in. A lot of things that have been added into the updated documents. And then we'll go through the current live systems on the portal. We'll go into the portal and look at what it looks like now and what to expect when it comes closer to testing time. So here you can see the main dates, the big dates for this year. The TIDE is live on the portal. Non-participation codes will be available in April when we start testing, or after we start testing. Get those codes will be available, for students that won't participate or can't participate. TA certification, that you'll learn quickly again, just like last year, that anybody that administered a test, if they took this last year, they have to take it again in order to administer tests. So the TA certification needs to be taken by anybody that needs to administer tests. And then the grades for reading, math, and ELA are going to be, the testing window is March 16th to May 8th. And then this year we're testing in science, grades 4, 8, and 10. And that is the same testing window as the other tests. And then the Airways score reporting, that is the new ORS, used to be the ORS. Those migration of existing results from previous years. You can get those now in the Airways score reporting system, but starting with the new test, with these new tests, some tests will be available near real time, so you'll be able to retrieve those in the reporting system. Okay, again, this screenshot still includes the ORS here, but that just keep in mind that that's changed to Airways. We still have our test information distribution engine TIDE, and those are taken from those overnight loads from STARS. The student population is taken from STARS and populates that TIDE system for testing. And then obviously we have our test delivery system with the eligibility settings, accommodations, and then our Airways reporting system where we retrieve reports for those that need to see those reports. Okay, so here's an overview of the different levels again. Nothing has changed with this from last year as far as the levels. There is going to be, I'm going to explain in a little bit that there is a little bit of change between the roles and what you can do in those roles from last year. So I'll clarify that when we get to the charts that explains those. So here, your district administrators, those are going to be those assigned superintendents assigned by DPI, the district administrators, and then the DTCs, the district test coordinators, are going to be those listed on the MIS 01s, and then the principals will be your school test coordinators at each school if you have multiple schools in your district, and then the test administrator and the teacher will be the two roles that will be more than likely be administering the tests. Documents for 2019-2020. So this section here links or live links to all of these documents. We went through them and made sure that, you know, things from last year that have changed name or have been integrated into other documents, we made those notes. We've organized this so that it is easy to just link to and understand that either that document is new or it's being updated still, or it's not going to be updated. It's the same as last year. So we have and we'll take a deeper look into most of these when we get to the portal. So you still have your student and family documents. We'll take a look at the fact sheet when we get there. That's a really good document for anybody that's involved to go through. Take a look at some of the training tests. I'll talk about the training tests. The training test, the practice tests will be available the week of 2/10, the science piece. That's not on there yet, the science practice test. And also during that week, the math and ELA training tests will be updated. So they'll have a different look, and some of the tools that are available this year will change within those tests, those training tests. So all people that are administering the tests, these key documents are going to be something that especially if they're new this year, if you've got new TAs in the building, or anybody that's going to be administering tests, you're going to want them to take a look at these different guides. A lot of great information in these. So we'll go through some of these a little more in depth on the portal. But like I said, this SWAY is meant to have quick links to them, kind of an all-in-one resource for what's on the portal. There's a couple that are coming soon. I will be, as they're coming in and as we're learning where those documents are going to be located, I will be updating this SWAY and creating those new links. So that'll be coming soon. And then tech coordinators.
Mute. It's unmuting.
Oops. And then the tech coordinators this year, they've changed the manuals for each operating system. So the manuals that were there last year, the tech specs manual, and I can't think of the other one right now off the top of my head, but these are all the manuals for configurations and troubleshooting for each operating system. So so each one is specified geared toward that specific operating system. And then anything to do with Tide, logging in, managing users, changing student test settings, monitoring test progress, and the quick guide also. And like I said, these are this first place is a place for links. We're going to go into the portal in a little bit here. So currently live on the portal, Tide is live. All the students have been populated migrated into Tide. And any overnight loads come from STARS will populate, make those updates automatically. And then the training test administration, like I've mentioned in previous years, it's a good idea to take a training test with your students, and do it in a way that it would be as if you were delivering the operational test. So you actually sign in and create a session, and have your students sign in with their test tickets into the secure browser and take a training test, so they get familiar, and so you get familiar with the testing system. Okay, and then we also have the, this is actually, this updated yesterday. This is now called Airways, the online reporting system. They just put the tile in there yesterday that says Airways now. You'll see that when we get to the live portal. It's just a screenshot. The TA certification, like I said, everybody has to take that. Even though if you took it last year, you have to retake it this year. And especially those that are new, they're going to learn everything they need to know about administering a test through that online video training. And then we have our administration resources and our secure inbox, and we also have our secure browser and training tests. Okay, so that's everything. The only thing will be when the test window opens, the test administration tile will be live, so those sessions can be created and tests can be administered. Okay, so that's kind of overview of what's live now, what's happening with documents. Part 2, we're going to go through the portal a little bit. Not too much in depth, but I just want to update you about some different changes and so on, some updates to those documents. Go through the login process again. Make sure you guys are logged into your Tide, have logged into your Tide account, or if you have any problems with that. And then we'll talk a little bit about browsers. So you can just click on the link here. If you're in another window, you can just click on the link if you're viewing this way without on the screen. Kelly also put that link in the chat window also. So if you're following along with me and don't have this way open a separate window, you can just click on the link in the chat window. So you can go ahead and click on that. We'll take a look at the portal. So you can see there's a lot of new announcements on the portal. And this first one here, well, we'll just talk about these really quick first. You're probably going to want to sign up for email updates. It's right up on the top right here of the portal. It's nice to know when something has changed, if a document's been updated, if an announcement's been posted. So this first message emphasizes the importance of signing up for email updates. So you can just click the link and either in the message or up on the top right here. So any changes to the portal, you'll be updated via email. And then the test administration manual, we're going to take a look at that because that contains some really important information for this year. So we'll take a look at that when we get into the documents, but there's a link here also in the announcement. We're going to find that in the administration resources. And then the announcement that I've already kind of briefed over, the Airways reporting system has replaced the ORS, and student results from 2016 to 2019 have been migrated to Airways. So anybody that has access to view reports within the reporting system will now be able to log into Airways and view reports from previous years. And just to re-emphasize that, I'm going to probably say it again, probably many times, a couple times. But in order for a person to have the ability to view reports in Tide or in the Airways system, a roster has to be created for that teacher and students assigned to that roster. So just keep that. I mentioned that many times last year, but it's like I said, I'll reiterate that down the road here. I just wanted to get that out there right away so I don't. So it's nothing new when we kind of get there. And here's the announcement right there. So this announcement tells you that school test coordinators should create rosters in Tide for teachers in their respective schools prior to the beginning of the testing window. Must be created for a teacher to be able to see his or her students' performance data in the Airways score reports. It says prior to the beginning of the testing window, but I mean, it still could, if it passes the testing window, you could create them during the testing window also. And then again, this new announcement, I've already reiterated that some of the information about the student enrollment records being uploaded and the accessibility student, those that are on IEPs, I'm going to reiterate this again later, but there was a statewide upload from TINET on January 22nd of 2020. So if a student had an IEP or 504 in TINET as of that date or before, That will be automatically transferred to Tide, but anything after that, you will have to manually do that upload from TiNet. So I have a document that shows you how to do that later on in the sway. Okay, so those are some recent announcements on the portal. We're going to go through some of the documents here. If we go over on the left there and click on students and families, you'll see the key documents here. This document for Airways, you know, if you used the online reporting system last year, you're going to want to go through these two guides for navigating and retrieving reports in Airways. These are some, these were just updated 2 days ago. So new guides, new stuff to look over as far as the reporting system. These are just if a person or if a family or student wants to take a practice test at home or something and they don't have access to these calculators, there's links to online versions of those calculators to complete the math problems on the practice test. The NDSA fact sheet, I'm going to open this one up. I'm going to zoom in here. Okay, so this is kind of, we're going to go through this a little bit, and I've already mentioned a few things, but there might be a few things on here that I didn't quite go over. But anybody that's going to be helping with testing this year, you're going to want to share this with them and kind of go over it. The science summative assessment will be in grades 4, 8, and 10. Airways replaces ORS. New universal testing tools. There's a couple there, English glossary and the assessment rubrics for grade 8 and 10, the writing portions of those. And then new accommodation designated supports testing tools, some Spanish language. Toggle will replace the stacking as a delivery mode, so some of those different features will be updated. Closed captioning will be available for audio content, so anything within the test that requires listening or watching a video, those will have closed captioning along with them. So no audio transcripts will need to be ordered if you need that accommodation. Spanish glossary will be available as a designated support for ELA math and science assessments. Okay, and then if you have the need for the Braille, here's the order form for. You can contact Tammy Mayer at DPI for any questions about that. And the online test, the ELA reading and writing, remember those are two separate, even though they're two separate tests, and will be administered for grades 3 through 8 and 10, and then science 4, 8, and 10. Preparing for testing, each test administrator must have an account in Tide in order to administer online assessments. And remember, if you have new people at your school this year that didn't do any testing or have anything to do with the testing system last year, they need to be added by a school test coordinator or above to the Tide system so they can deliver tests and so on. Your Tide account provides access to all the AIR systems. If you're registered in Tide last year, you'll be required to update your password. So we'll go through that a little bit later in this way. Give you a chance to try to log in if you haven't yet this year. The TA certification course, again, must be completed by all test administrators prior to giving tests. They must take it regardless if it was taken last year. Here's some accessibility and accommodations announcements. Nothing, the first thing was in place last year also. Compliancy. You want to make sure all test settings are correctly set in Tide at least 24 hours before the administering of the test. So you want to make sure if you do have students that have specific needs, you verify those with the either special ed department to make sure everything's set properly. And I'll show you where to retrieve a nice layout of a document that shows the student and what tools they have available to them on tests. A Spanish language designated support is available on math assessments. And then, like I said, the toggle will be language delivery mode for Spanish in spring of 2020. Detailed information on universal tools and so on can be found in the accessibility manual, which we'll take a look at a little bit here. Headphones may be required for reading assessments in grades 5, 6, 7, and 10. So only those grades and only that reading portion, those will be required for those. So it's not required for anything else except those specific reading portions, reading in the grade levels. Braille booklet order forms, like I said, contact Tammy Meyer at the DPI. Okay, so like I said, the training tests, it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the process of creating a testing session and starting a test, and there's been some updates to some of the screens as far as the test administrator monitoring progress and so on, and you know, viewing students, what question they're on, and so on. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself and your students with the testing system. So we'll kind of go through that process when we look at the training tests. And again, the operational tests, the students must take the operational tests using the secure browser. The secure browsers from last year are no longer supported. You have to dump those and reinstall the browsers, the new browser updates that are available this year. And those are available, and we'll take a look at those. Are there stopping points? Yes, there is. It can be delivered. This is not a timed test. So it can be delivered into multiple time segments. So that the segments don't have to be based on number of questions completed. Students can be in different spots within the test, and they would pick up where they left off on the next testing session. Waiting period between reading and writing. NDSA, like I said, 2 separate tests. They'll have the test administrator will have the option to administer both the reading and writing in one session, or to break up the administration of the test into 2 separate sessions. And that all depends on, you know, kind of where you leave off at certain points. I mean, it's pretty strenuous if you do them right in a row for the whole time. So just keep that in mind. And then the score reporting, again, the Airways, just reiterating some tests, the reading portion and the math portion, those results will be available near real time in Airways. So as students are completing their reading and math portions, those should be available fairly instantaneously to view in Airways. The ELA scores will be available only after both the reading and writing have been completed. And scores for the 2019-2020 science will be available in early fall of 2020. So those won't be available right away, the science piece. Some portions of the writing piece may take up to 10 days to receive the results, as those require some human scoring. And then, like I said, authorized users can access scores and performance information for prior school years on Airways. So only authorized, if a teacher has a roster created in Tide, they can have access to those scores. Okay, so here's some help desk information for the NDSA help desk and their hours. And then just another link to the portal here. So this document, you know, you might want to sit down with the people that are involved with testing and then go through this fact sheet. Okay. All right, and then we have an overview page of the Lexile and Quantile measurements for scoring. We went through that several times. You know, if you want to take a look at those, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Just shows you kind of what the scores mean when they receive a number for a score. Quantile tools and resources, another resource for looking at how that score is determined and what it means as far as where a student is in their learning for that concept. And then the standard operating procedures for viewing the NDSA. If a parent or somebody in the community, or a relative of the, I guess, I don't know if that's true, but I'll just say a parent of the student wants to review their kids' results. Here's procedures for the legalities and so on with sharing those scores with parents and so on. Okay, so those are kind of the student and family resources, key documents. I'm just going to go back to home really quick, and now I'm going to go to the NDSA assessment tile. So here's what we saw in the screenshot. We have all of our Tide is live. You can log in, manage students, add users, so on. And it's always a good idea at the beginning of each year, especially if you're the school test coordinator or the district admin test coordinator or district administrator, to go into Tide, look at your users and anybody that's not involved with your school anymore, or they're not involved with testing anymore, to remove them from the system. So keep your data clean. The training test administration, we'll go through that process towards the end here of how to administer that test as if it were going to be an operational test, so you can get familiar with it. This will be live when the testing window opens. This tile, which I talked about on the screenshot, updated on the portal to Airways reporting, and then the TA certification that needs to be taken by all, and then our administration resources. But we're going to take a look at these key documents over on the right here. So here's those Airways reporting guides again. All these are linked again in the SWAY, but here they are on the portal. This Airways reporting guide, something brand new. If you're going to be using those reports or looking at those reports, something you're going to want to go through to be able to function within the Airways reporting system. The assistive technology manual, that's anything. I'm going to just click on that really quick. Okay, and if you scroll down, this just has everything to do. I'm just going to go over the table of contents to show you what's in there. Using different modes with assistive technology, testing with speech to text technology, predictive text technology, and anything that has, and then also the text to speech. So anything that is involved with using those types of special accommodations, you're going to want to look at these and what's required for those types of accommodations. Okay, so a lot of in-depth information in there. We also have again, that we've already talked about that, the Braille book order form, but I'm going to scroll down a little bit. This is, this is going to be, well, I'm going to click in the NDSA 2019 scheduling. This is a little outdated. This is, I think they might be getting rid of this document. I'm not sure, but this is an old one, so just kind of, I've inquired about it, so it's in. You're going to find this in a different document because this doesn't include the science piece. So I just want you to be aware that I'm not sure what they're going to do with this document, but I'll show you where the proposed testing times with the science piece incorporated into it is. It's in a new guide. Okay. Administering tests, PowerPoint. If you have people that are administering tests, they need additional resources. They're going to want to go through this, or if you have a staff meeting with your folks that are going to be administering the tests, this would be a good resource to use. Or a lot of schools, what I've learned over the years is that they designate a staff meeting or something like that where they build in some time for those that have to administer tests to take those TA certification courses and go through that together. So the fact sheet, which we just went over, proposed testing times. Like I said, this is, I'm going to inquire about that again if they just want to stick with the one document, but this is also outdated. I'll inquire about that again to find out where those are going to be located, but I'll show you where they are in the guide, the proper guide. And then here's all the rubrics for the writing pieces for those grades. And then we have our online testing system TA user guide. I'm going to click on that one really quick. This has everything you need to know about the online testing system, the sites that are available, user roles and system requirements, general rules of online testing. If you keep scrolling down, it has screenshots, shot by shot of how to log in and log in and start a session. This is starting a training test with having the ability to log in and create a test session with a training test, and then having students log in with their test ticket and taking a training test. So simulating what it's going to be like when you take the operational tests. Okay, so a lot of good information, a lot of good screenshots to get your test administrators familiar with the system. Okay, and then the test administration manual. Down a little ways here, so I'm going to click on that one. Test administration manual. This is where you're going to find the test administration manual is where you're going to find the updated testing times with the science piece added in. Okay, so you can see here that the science for grades 4, 8, and 10 in the top 85th percentile would be able to finish it in those amount of times. So when you're scheduling the times, a good document to look at to take into consideration. Obviously, like I said, it's not a time test, so you know, it can be split as many sessions as you want for a student to complete it. Okay, so this has again a ton of information here, and if you scroll down to the very bottom, administering the NDSA test, it has a script. So if you have new TAs in your building that don't quite know how to word everything to start a test, it has a script here and exactly what to do. And this new screenshot on page 13 here, I'm going to zoom in a little more so you can see it better. But this is what your operational test, when starting an operational test session, will look like with the new science piece added in. Okay, so these will be the available tests to administer. Okay, and so it goes through step by step on what a test administrator needs to do, approving students, and then step 7, reading scripted directions. So if they want to follow this, they can, or modify it as it fits it to them. But here's this total script for grades 3 through 8 and writing tests, exactly what to say. Assisting students who need help signing in, blah, and then goes through each test and what to say for each test. Grades 3, 8, and 10 reading tests. So pretty good stuff here. It's hard to say that we don't have enough resources here. Okay, and then the test administrator quick guide. This is a good idea to have by any test administrator, no matter whether they've been doing this or not over the past years. This is going to be just a quick guide to have on hand while administering the test if you have questions. Going through login all the way to starting a test, how to create a new test session, and like I said, the test administrator certification course will go through this also. Just a reiteration of that, but just a nice document to have on hand by you. So if you have any questions, you can refer to it for confirmation. So a lot of great information in that quick guide. And then we have all of our documents for TIDE. So anything within TIDE where you're going to be managing student test settings, you're going to be updating settings up, the test settings update process, and the TIDE user guide If you have people new in your building that need to know about functioning, adding users, managing student test settings, and so on, these guides would be a good idea to take a look through for those users. And we'll take a quick look inside and go through a few things just to review a few things. Okay, so those are the what's available as the key documents for the assessment, for TIDE, for the reporting system, for test administrators within the portal. Okay, so Kelly just pointed out to me that there was a question in the chat window, and I'm just going to address it right now. Since we need to roster students this year, does that mean all teachers need both TA and TE roles? So that's a good question. That's an excellent question. And you're going to see that you're going to see that when we get to the charts for the roles and their capabilities, because that actually has changed since last year. And I'll just say it right now. If you have a teacher that's administering tests also, last year you had to add them as dual roles because some of the responsibilities or some of the capabilities of the teacher didn't match up with being able to administer a test. That's no longer needed. So the teacher will have, if you just assign them as a teacher, they will have the capability to administer tests also. So we'll look at those differences when we get to the chart in this way. But excellent question. So we'll continue with that. Hopefully that helped, and I'll reiterate that when we get to that point. Okay, so if I go back to home here from the portal, here's specific to tech coordinators here. Over on the right there, we're going to look at the secure browsers. So if I click on secure browser, here's all of the, I'm going to back up a little bit, it's a little close on mine. There we go. So like I said, the old browsers from last year need to be wiped out, and then the current versions of those browsers need to be reinstalled or installed on those devices. Here's all the different operating systems and the supported devices for those different systems. So, and it has some related requirements for disabling and different things for each of those operating systems. So we have everything from Linux to, and a lot of schools are testing with iPads. So there's the Air Secure Test secure browser, called the same thing as last year, but obviously it's a new version. So just all 9.7-inch or larger iPads running a supported version of iOS for that those versions. And then Chrome, anything going back to 75 will be supported. So 75 and above for Chromebooks. So just make sure those are, they must be in kiosk mode, and getting closer to the test window. I think we're at 79 or something like that right now. But any updates, I would disable those during or up to that, getting close to that testing window, because it'll just Cambium, which is now AIR. I guess I didn't mention that yet, but AIR is now Cambium. Just that name change, but they'll be making those updates as the Chrome is updating. So, but when the testing window gets closer, I would disable those automatic updates. And then the Windows information. And if you keep scrolling down, this is where you're going to find all of the secure browsers. So depending on your situation, if you have a device manager at your school, this would give you instructions. For example, if you click on Chrome OS, it will have all the information for installing it on there. And then those manuals, if I go back here, if I go back and click on tech coordinators again, each of these manuals, so the configurations, troubleshooting, advanced secure installation for Chrome. I'm just using Chrome as an example. If I click on that, it has step-by-step information on which URLs to whitelist, and this is going to be consistent through all the different operating systems or so on. But you're going to look at that. It's a little bit different than last year. The IP addresses, just verify those are still in place. And then if you keep scrolling down, it shows you how to install that kiosk, in the kiosk mode on managed Chromebooks. So great resource for installing the browsers. Yeah, I mean, you got some really great detail here on this document, step-by-step information. Okay, so that's just a overview of the secure browsers, where to find them and where to find the resources to get those installed on the devices. Okay, so I'm going to back up and go back to the Tech Coordinators section again. Okay, and I'm going to go home. All right, so again, just reiterating where to find important dates is there's another spot on the portal where you can just log in, click on that. There might be some information. It just shows the testing window right now on that link. Those are your main focus for dates to get to know when the testing window is. Okay, so that was just a general overview of some of the information on the portal, and for each kind of separate responsibility for where to locate those resources on the portal. And as they always do, this website, I think, does a really good job of keeping that information in an accessible place for you to get to. I'm going to click on back over to the SWAY, and we're going to go through some more stuff here. Okay, so we all went through the portal, some updates. We're going to go through the updates this year, and like I said, some of this might be a little repetitive since I've kind of mentioned a few things already. But here's that announcement for the Cambium Learning Group acquiring the assessment division of AIR. The science assessment, again, Airways, new universal testing tools again, the TIDE, some updates in TIDE, the status updates and participation reports will be more current. The secure inbox will have more email-like features for secure documents and global features, quick user search, quick search box in TIDE that only supported students before now includes users. So instead of having separate searches for each of those, they're included in both, so you don't have to do them separately. And then some global features, quick user search, some more visible context menus, dog-eared pages when marked, and so on. And then progress bar to track students' progress, and revamped navigation drop-down. And this progress bar to track students' progress there's a little screenshot on the right there. I'll click on that, and this is just kind of an overview of what that's going to look like. So it'll show the progress where a student is at on that specific test. And then the login procedure is still the same. That time-bound code, so logging in, if you went through the process. If not, we'll get to that. You can go do that really quick. Doesn't take a lot of time. And you may be asked for that to retrieve that code again in the following situations. If you're using a new or different computer, using a browser for the first time, or using private mode in a browser. Unless those situations exist, you shouldn't be prompted for at least a year to enter that code again. But like I said, all of the emails have been reset The passwords have been reset this year, so that initial login will require you to retrieve that code. And that is a 15-minute time limit on it to enter that code and log into time to change your password. If it doesn't, if you somehow you lose that email or something happens, you can always resend it. And there is possibility, like we say each year, it's a good idea to add that email address to your contacts so you ensure that you get that email. And I'll show you where it's coming from in a little bit here. Okay, so here's the password policies again, 8 characters, 1 uppercase, lowercase, a special character like a hashtag or exclamation point or something like that, and then a number also in that password. Common issues with logging in, delayed receipt of the email, it went to the junk folder, the IP addresses needs to be whitelisted. I'm still updating that piece of it. They were in the, I believe it's this one here, but I guess I have to verify that. I'll be updating that. And then notifications will be posted on the portal if there is a problem with logins, you know, certain days or whatever. You would see that information if it's a statewide issue. And that's why it's important to sign up for updates on the portal. And this is the address that it's still coming from, that reset link or that code, time-bound code. That would be what you'd want to add to your contacts to ensure timely delivery of that code. Okay. All right, so accommodations, universal tool, some updates to those. We've already talked about that first piece. We went closed captioning, again, reiterating that that will be available, so no need to order those transcripts. Test administrators can use, again, when administering a test, they can use any supported browser, and those supported browsers are on the portal here. I'm going to switch on over really quick. And up top on the home page, supported browsers. So if a test administrator is using these devices to administer a test, these are the minimum requirements for those browser versions for administering the test. Okay. So a quick look at those. And but obviously the students must have that newest version of the secure browser to take the test. And that secure browser locks them out of any outside access to opening other tabs and stuff like that. Just reiteration of removing that old browser and installing the latest. Okay, so just some testing device tips for test administrators. Make sure pop-ups are enabled during testing. It will prompt you if those aren't enabled before you open up a test. Try to start a test. It will prompt you to disable pop-ups or enable pop-ups. Sorry. Close any external user applications. Don't test with dual monitors, and forbidden application detection. Okay, so this is where we're going to touch base on some considerations for your network. Make sure you still have that information. User roles and permissions. We had that great question earlier about that. So we'll go into that. We'll look into TIDE a little bit, make sure we're familiar with that, adding roles and so on. Looking at test setting or student test settings and so on, printing test tickets. Here's some network considerations. Must be done on an encrypted network. And then all content filters, open all those filters, firewalls, proxy servers. Set your timeouts for the networks long as needed for those testing sessions. And then data caching can't be on. And then just make sure you prioritize NDSA testing. Just let your staff know that, you know, during that time, it's not a good idea to be streaming videos or downloading huge files and so on. So you don't have any, so you can ensure the best you can a successful testing session. So here's some sites for Whitelist. These were in each of the documents for the secure browser configurations and so on. So this is just a screenshot of the one of them. So just take a look at those. If there's anything, these have been applied to the state filter, but it's your responsibility to apply those at your local districts. Tech specs, again, one student testing per 8 kilobit second is required for that one student. So anything above that, take times 8, and you will see the amount of bandwidth consumed during those specific testing, number of people testing. And as always, it's a good idea to check around your building where you're going to be testing from, because I know, you know, a lot of older buildings where I worked, if you were in my room, sometimes, you know, the internet would be completely different in that room, speeds and so on. So make sure you're testing from those rooms, the network and so on, to make sure that it's going to be sufficient for testing. And the tool that we've suggested in the past that a lot of people like is speedtest.net. And then also Cambium has provided a nice tool on the login screen of a diagnostic tool, and that's actually located in the, I'll show you where it's located. So if you go to the portal and you go to the training tests over on the mustard colored tile for training tests, and you click on take the training test, it's right here, the run diagnostics. And there's screenshots in this way that show that too. Click on run diagnostic, you put in the number of students that you're going to be, the estimated number, and the type of test you're going to be. If I do math, and there's going to be 20 students testing, it will run a test based on those numbers and let you know if it thinks that you're good to go. So a nice little tool there for testing your network. Okay, so here's that screenshot. So tech coordinators, operating system considerations. Again, these manuals, I don't think they could have made it any easier for configurations, troubleshooting, and advanced secure browser installation guides. If I click on the one for the Mac, I'm going to just click on that link and just browse through it. So Macs, it gives you everything, how to configure your network, which resources to whitelist, which ports and protocols, and so on, all the way down to what to disable as far as third-party apps and iTunes and how to complete those functionalities. So everything you need to know per operating system. Like I said, important to go through this to make sure everything is set for a successful testing. Your technology at your school. So these manuals are available for each operating system. We already kind of looked at this, the browsers. So you know where to locate your operating system and where the secure browsers are for each of those operating systems. Okay, so if I'll give you logging into Tide for the first time, we're going to go into the portal. Log out some of these. I got a tab problem here. All right, home. We're log into Tide really quick and make sure your password is good to go. So if you click on from the portal, you click on NDSA assessment, click on Tide. I'm going to zoom out just a little. There we go. Tide. And you're going to, if it's your first time logging in this year, you're going to click on this link. Okay. If you've already done that, you can go ahead and log in. But if you want to If it is first time, click on request a new one for this school year, and you will receive that link in your email. And if you can't remember which email you used for the Tide system, you can always have a school test coordinator or somebody that can view users in Tide look that up for you. Okay, so I'm thinking that okay, so I'm thinking most of you have logged into Tide. And like I said, depending on your role at your school, but if you've never been, if you're in this call and you've never been in Tide or added to Tide, you need to have a school test coordinator or above that role add you to the Tide system. So you can log in, and especially if you're going to be a test administrator, you're going to need that login to administer tests during the testing window. So you can see here that, and you guys, it'll look different on your screen because I have state administrator privileges. So user role, if you click on that, you'll see any role that you've been assigned in Tide, and anything at that role or below it. So I'm going to select state administrator. You guys can select whatever role it is you play at your school and click on submit. And you'll notice that if you're just a TA at your school or a TE, some of these you won't see. So if I switch roles, if you look at my screen, you'll see that I have access to everything in each of the different parts. If I click on manage account and change role to a TA, you'll see that I only have access to things that deal with administering a test. Because a lot of times a school will have paras or even community members that are helping with testing, and that's all they need is just to be a test administrator role in Tide. So don't give the keys to the kingdom to those that don't need it. That's a famous Paul Jensen quote. Okay, so anyway, so you could see the different roles will see different information. I'm going to change back to a state administrator role. Okay, I'm going to go back to the SWAY for a little bit here. So those were just screenshots, and if you had any problems with logging in, let us know in the chat window, and I can answer those, or if you need to contact AI or Cambium, we can steer you that way. Okay, like I said, they've reset all of the user accounts this year, so just be aware that you have to retrieve that code and password. Okay, Tide user levels. So this is where that question was asked about the roles and their specifics. Okay, so what I've done, what Kelly and I have done, is we've taken those screenshots from last year and compared them to this year. So I left the old ones in there for a reason, so you could see the changes between the different years, okay? So that's kind of why this is the way it is. Well, last year, if you remember, a teacher had to have so let's say you had to create a teacher role for them because they needed to view reports in the online report, or the Airways, which is now called Airways. Well, if they were also going to be administering tests, they also had to have a TA role, because some of the privileges like viewing and editing students, like where I'm at right now, wasn't available to a teacher role. Well, if you look at the new version, they are now. So that so the necessity to assign dual roles to a teacher because they need privileges to view reports and the ability to administer tests is no longer needed to assign dual roles to a teacher. Does that, I hope that makes sense. Adding students, that's probably not going to be a typical duty of I'm going to click on the new this year's chart so you can see it better. So adding students, that's very unlikely that would happen manually in Tide. Those nightly uploads should take care of those processes if all of your information is entered into STARS. And then the TE, TA role, the teacher now has ability to view and add students, generate those frequency reports, view and edit test settings and tools, and upload test settings and tools. Okay, so the Tide users, creating users, managing users, and so on, those are responsibilities of the school coordinator and above. Okay, so the TA, TE, and TA can't go in and add user accounts to Tide. Okay, so the school test coordinator should be taking care of those tasks within Tide if they need to add people to the system. Rosters, modifying or adding new rosters. So the school coordinator above can add, they have to create the roster, they have to make the roster. But be aware again that the teacher has to be assigned to that roster and the students assigned to that roster for them to view reports in Airways. But after that roster has been created, the teacher or the TA can make modifications if something changes on their testing on their roster, if a student is added or something like that. So they can modify those. And then printing testing tickets, those are available through all roles. Let's go to the next one here. So last year, this next screenshot here, those two boxes weren't available to those roles, and this year the teacher, the one I'm hovering over right now, is available to the teacher. So see it where it's blank last year, available this year. Okay, so those updates have been made so you don't have to have assigned dual roles. So again, printing test tickets, teacher, TA, all roles can do that. Invalidation requests and so on are the responsibility of school test coordinators and above. Monitoring test progress, you're going to look at completion, overall completion rates, or what the school test coordinators and above are going to look at, and reviewing those status code reports. All levels can see those because you might need to know that as a test administrator to know where students are at, so you can schedule accordingly to those where they're at a test. And then the special codes, the top 3 levels, the voice packs and so on, downloading files from the inbox, and accessibility supports, those are all levels capabilities. And then lastly, no changes on these roles from last year to this year. So everything has stayed the same as far as the TA sites and so on, practice and training sites, student interface practice and training sites. So all of the levels have access to those. And then the score reports. Notice that none of the TA role would have access to score reports. Because like I said, that might be a para or a community member or just a helper at the school, could be administering tests. And then a couple changes, or one small change within the last screenshot here. The TE can now view and edit a roster. Okay, so if you look at this chart, you'll see the summary statistics and retrieve student results, teacher role, and then the view and edit a roster, which wasn't available last year to a teacher role, is now. And it all has to do with being able to function when administering a test. But you don't have to create rosters to be testing. I just want to clarify that. You can just look a class up on Tide and use that class. But if you use rosters, but it is necessary to have a roster created with a teacher assigned in order for them to be reports. Okay, so those hopefully that helps you with explanation and the summary, the role between those two changes for the TE and TA. So no longer necessity to have dual roles for a teacher if they're administering tests and need capabilities for viewing reports. All right. So we're going to go into Tide and just take a look around again, just to reiterate some information, make sure you're familiar with where to do these different tasks and so on. We're not going to spend a ton of time in it, but just to give you an overview, because most of you have had experience in, if not all, have had a little experience in Tide, or looking into Tide and so on. So if you're logged in to Tide, here we are. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Your users and so on are still under here. So if you want to take a look at, let's just go to view or add users. So let's say you're a school test coordinator, and if you're not, remember, you're not going to see this. Okay, if you're a TA or a TE, you're not going to see the ability to add users, so just be aware of that. So adding users, if you're a school test coordinator, you'll put their information in, and so on. Oh, jeepers, sorry, my fault. I'm just making this up. Go along. Okay, there we go. And then you'll be required to pick a name, or to enter their name. Phone number is not required. The role. So if you're a school test coordinator, you can assign roles at school test coordinator level or below. If you're a district administrator, you'd be able to assign a district administrator role or below. So I can't be a school test coordinator and make somebody a district test coordinator. But since I'm state, you see all the roles available. And then once you get that information in, it would send that user an email, and they would go and create a password and then be able to log into the system. It's always a good idea to look at users in your school. So let's say up on this drop down, instead of having to go back to home, I'm going to go up to the little drop down with users and go to view, edit, export users. I'm going to select a role. I'm just going to say all roles at the district, or I need to switch, my fault. I'm going to go and switch roles because I got to decipher a district. So I'm going to switch to school test coordinator. I'm going to say district, my demo district here. Submit. Okay, so now I go back into users and view those. So it's always a good idea to take a look at them. All roles, school test coordinators at that demo district. And you could specify it to an email address, first name, last name. I'm just going to say all at that level. Search, you can see I got 7 results. You can export to inbox. So if you wanted to export that, it would export to the inbox. So if I click on, I want an Excel of it to my inbox. So I'd go up here to check that. And you would see it. Users at demo institution, you'd be able to open it up and use it in an Excel format. But I could just view them on screen too. So if I do this search again and click view results, I could look at these, and depending on your role, you'd be able to edit them and delete them. So it's a good idea if you have people that left the school last year, go in here and make sure they're not in there anymore, delete them out of your system. So just cleaning data up is important. Okay, So that's kind of adding users, viewing, editing, exporting users to that inbox and so on. So you can go in, you can change their information if you click on the edit pencil pen. So if I want to go in there and change their name, or they updated their last name or something like that, I could do that, or add their phone number. And once they start, once they complete the TA certification course, you'd be able to see that change here. It would mark it yes or no. Okay, so that's users. Students, however, we're going to add, or like I said, adding students is going to be not very typical, unless it comes down to last minute and that you've checked your resources before doing that. So DPI is a good resource to have to call, make sure that that all ends have been covered before adding a student manually to Tide, because like I said, those nightly uploads should take care of those changes. And also, if a student transfers districts or transfers a school in your district, if you have multiple schools in your district, that change in stars, or when that takes place, that should take care of that change. Or if they transfer in state, should also take care of that change through the system. And even if they leave the state, leave them in, and at the end you'll be able to do that data cleanup, take care of that. And that's, I'm getting ahead a little bit, that's in the SWAY, those points I just made. So so those are also reiterated. Rosters, add a roster, like I said, if a teacher needs to view reports, this has to be done. So if I add a roster and I go to my demo district here, and I say, I'll say grade 4, say grade 4, roster name. And remember, when you're naming rosters, be specific. You could say Miller, teacher name, grade 4 _ 2019 up 2020. So be specific. Don't just say my roster or something generic, because if you have a lot of these, be pretty hard to identify sometimes which one belongs where. And then you would assign a teacher to that role. Okay, and then you would see once I click search for that grade, you would see them populate down here in the roster area. These are the ones available. And I'll say, okay, I verified these are all my students in my class, in that teachers' class, sorry. I could go add all and save that for that roster. So that would identify, so if a teacher, then this teacher, if they were logging in to start a test, they would see this available to them for testing, or like I said, from that class search. Either way, you can use that. But this is necessary for them in order to view reports. Okay, so they would just save that. All right. And there's screenshots of that in Tide, or in the SWAY also. And then the test settings and tools. We can go in there. I'm going to click on that really quick. Test settings and tools. We can look at the district again. I'm going to look at the demo district. And I'm going to say grade 4 again. I'm just going to say all fields. So I'm going to search for that. View results. Okay, and here's all of the 9th graders, and this has information about all the settings. Now again, I've mentioned in previous years that this is not friendly for me to read this. I can't understand this. So if I'm a test administrator and I have no idea what these mean, There's an easier way to look at these. So if you click on the print button here and go to all student test settings and tools, here's a much nicer explanation of each student and those accommodations, what those accommodations are, or which ones are available to them, and kind of easier to look at. Maybe verify that with your special ed department to make sure everything is correct. But more, like I said, the upload from TiNet happened on January 22nd, statewide, and any IEPs that were created or modified, information in IEPs 504s since that date need to be manually completed, and I'll show you where that document is in this way when we get there. And then also, this is screen. There's many ways to get there, but this is one way of printing test tickets. I can click, right now I'm on test settings and tools. I can click on test tickets and take a look at the layout, choose whatever layout you want, say 3x2, and print that. And that's just going to save a PDF because I'm not connected to a printer, and they will look like that. So the student will need these test tickets for testing because they'll need their ID and so on to log in to a test. And as always in the past that we've recommended, I've seen a lot of creative ways of bigger, if you're a bigger district, even smaller district, doesn't matter, identifying each grade level, printing them on different colored paper. So if a student drops it in the hallway or something, or they get mixed up, they can identify at least which grade that is by differentiating the colors. Okay, so those are settings, tools, printing test tickets. It's kind of where we're at there. So that's a pretty run through, I guess, of TIDE, because I feel that since you are signed up for the updates to NDSA, we don't need to spend a ton of time going through this. And there's a lot of screenshots in the sway that go into further detail to get you, so you recognize and familiarize yourself with that process. So I'm going to go back to this way real quick. We're going to take a 5-minute break, just so I can get some water here, and so you can stand up and stretch. But we have probably about half hour, 45 minutes left, and then you will have some built-in time at the end if you want to stay online. I know I was a teacher for 5 years. I know when you're assigned to, or when you get the freedom to be part of a workshop or something, or get to do that, it's nice to have some built-in time to accomplish something. So at the end, if you want to stay online and complete the TA certification course, feel free to do so, since you have that time built in, because we are scheduled till noon, but I'm allowing that time at the end. So about 5 minutes, we'll begin back up at 10:30, and we will finish up. Thank you. All right, we'll get started again here. Hopefully you had a chance to stretch and stuff like that. But like I said, we'll be wrapped up a little early here, and you'll have time at the end if you choose to do so to finish the TA certification if you are responsible for administering tests at your school. Okay, so back to the SWAY here. A lot of this we've already accomplished within TIDE. So users again, it's a good idea again to look at users and take those out of the system that are no longer with your school, add the new ones to your system that are going to be administering tests or new coordinators in your schools. So upload users, if you have a massive amount of users, you can use a template. We didn't really go into that, but that's kind of a situational. If you do have a bigger district and you have multiple users that you're adding, instead of doing those individually in TIDE, you could use a template for that. So that's just kind of reiterating that point. TA certification is required by all. Keep stressing that. It's always important to let people know that they have to do that before they can administer a test. It's going to look almost exactly as last year, with a few minor changes with that science piece added in. But as far as that, screenshots and so on that are in the SWAY, it's going to be what to expect on the TA certification. And it usually takes about 30 minutes. And if you're in a room with multiple people, if you're doing this at the same time. Now you can't necessarily view it all on one screen. So let's say it's during a meeting or something and you're just going to watch it up on the screen. It won't recognize that you've taken that if you're just watching it. So you actually have to take it physically on the device as you're logged in order to receive credit for taking that. Just kind of keep that in mind. And then on part 5 here, we're going to go through looking at students. We've already done some of that. We've done a lot of the TIDE activity already. We're going to look at some updates to some of the accessibilities, accommodations, and supports for some of those. So student enrollment records, those have been uploaded, like I said before. Those will be updated daily based on enrollment information in STARS. And those nightly updates happening will populate and update the TIDE system. Again, the accommodations and supports from TINET, that was on January 22nd. Anything prior to that, you see there's a link right below this date here. It says here is a manual for more information, and that is the manual for the upload from STARS. So I'm going to click on that really quick and just you've probably seen it before if you worked with this in previous years, but this is the 3 options for update those supports. So I'm going to scroll down. It's got screenshots of each step in order to upload those from STARS. Okay. So information on how to do that. All right, students, so again, only DPI can, or be aware that new students may take a few days to appear as they're entered. Only ND DPI can delete students, so keep PowerSchool data clean and up to date. If there's any questions, transfers out of state, things that students that don't participate and so on, those codes can be entered at the end for data cleanup. And then students who move, transfer in district, again, these nightly uploads should take care of that, that transfer, and then a transfer out of state, keep them, clean up the data at the end. Adding and managing students, adding is going to be not very typical. So again, we've already kind of looked at this, but some of the information that would be required if adding would be all of the district and ID numbers and so on. But like I said, make sure you touch base with your proper channels before manually adding a student and the necessity of that before doing it. So when another way to get to because before when we were looking at students, when I was searching for classes, we had the ability to look at those settings and print test tickets. Well, that's also in that middle section here. Click back over to Tide. Another way to get there is print test tickets under the Administering Tests tab, because not all people would have access to view it in that other view. So if you're a test administrator, you'll print test tickets from the screen section here. Invalidation and appeals, going back to SWAY, those will be done by school test coordinators if there is something where the student, something happened maybe with their network, went down and students got kicked off and couldn't go back to where they were for some reason on a test. You put in an appeal and have that portion open back up. Things like that would be taken care of through that channel. And then monitoring test progress, you'd be able to see where students are at a certain point by running those reports. And then data cleanup, that'll be at the end of testing. Okay, and then so here's a screenshot again of those student test settings and tools what we looked at. Just a nice printout of, and make sure you destroy this after testing so nobody can view those that shouldn't see any accommodations or something like that. So nice view of that. There's the test ticket again. The student will need that information to log into the test. Tied rosters. Here's screenshots of creating those rosters again. Those can be added, modified, deleted at any time. They provide score information for the roster set of students. You must connect a teacher with a roster for them to view reports. I think I've said that enough now. We're probably getting sick of it. Okay, so here's the rosters. Again, screenshots of searching that grade, looking and adding them to that designated roster. Okay, so just step-by-step screenshots. Here's the appeals requests again. Reopen a test. You can reset a test. Like I said, if something happens at your school or emergency situations, you would be able to put those appeals in to get that reopened or whatever situation it is you're in. So monitoring progress again, completion rates. You can look at, this is an older screenshot, but you can look at the reports, and remember that's going to be updated to that earlier version of that screenshot with the taskbar and percentage rates. So this screen will look a lot different. So when looking at these types of reports, just keep that in mind. So it'll have their progress, which test, and what percentage completion rate they're at on those tests. Okay, and then so monitoring progress, you'll be able to see this information, their settings and so on, and any actions that could be performed during that while you're monitoring progress. How to print a report to show students' progress. You're going to find that it'll show each test for each student and their status. That's going to be found in the user guide to complete that process. The screenshots here, going to that. Test status code reports. You're going to look. You can export those reports again to the inbox. Your choice. If you select export, you can view them, or you can view them right on the screen. Okay, and then you can look at those and note there should be 3 entries for each student. Well, now there's going to be 4 when those science for those science pieces added in there. Okay. All right. So data cleanup at the end. This will more than likely be your school test coordinators and above taking care of these tasks, entering non-participation codes if students opt out of the test, and then the special codes will be entered at the end of the testing window. Okay, this update here, or this isn't necessarily updated. I'm waiting on a document from Cambium that is going to have a kind of a difference here for some of the universal tools and so on. But these are still present in the test and so on. But there will be some updates to this screenshot as soon as I receive those. So some of the universal tools, those are available to all students again, depending on the type of question, you know. Those are built-in tools. More than likely, the embedded tools will be in the testing system. So non-embedded would be, example would be scratch paper and breaks, non-embedded breaks. So the scratch paper though, make sure you destroy that after a testing session. That's an important piece to shred those. Designated supports, those are available to student. It has been specified by an educator, parent, guardian, or student. So a felt need by those folks that this student needs that support to be successful on the test, because they you know, have a need for that. A felt need doesn't necessarily have to be documented, but just a desire, a need for that support. And then accommodations are those on IEPs, 504s that have those accommodations. Okay, part 6. We're going to go over a few more of the documents that have some updates and some of the rules and so on, the TA interface, some of the updates, and like I said, these are kind of coming in as updating. So some of the screenshots here will update as I receive those new documents and so on. The TA view, the student view, especially with that science piece, we don't have access to the science training test yet, but that will be available soon, and I can get those incorporated also. So some of the rules, ELA tests, reading and writing separate, but you know, separate sessions if you wish. Test timeout after 20 minutes of inactivity, and then notification sent after that, and then if 30 seconds they don't respond, they'll be logged out that test. And then some of the secure login or when a test administrator logs into the test or logs in to start an operational test, they will retrieve that session ID. So back on the portal here, when the testing window opens, when they click on this and log in to test administration, they will, you know, decide, or it'll say, well, which test would you like to start? They'll select that. Once they start it, they'll retrieve that session ID and put it up on the board or wherever students can retrieve it. And then they will need that information to log into the test along with their test ticket. And then the test administrator will have a screen similar to this, where they will see a status, what question they're on, and so on. They can pause the test from here, test administrator, and so on. Okay, and a lot of these, I said, these will be updated. Cambium may send messages out through the portal, through the Tide portal, and you'll see that up in the up here. Any information delivered through the portal would come information in your inbox or alerts. Like I said, some of these will be updated. Okay, so during a test, when students log in, the test administrator will see whether to approve them. So they will make sure, you know, that the correct students are taking the proper tests, and then decide whether to approve them. They could check their test settings before they start, but most of that will be verified by the student themselves before starting a test. So the student will see this screen when they log into a test. They will see the test settings, and then will be brought into the test. Okay, so this is similar to previous years when the student signs into the browser. the secure browser, when they log the secure browser, they will be brought to a sign-in screen where they will be required for the first name, their student ID, and the session ID number, which the test administrator will give them. The other information is located on the test ticket. Common errors of signing in. The session was not created yet, does not exist. Wrong number was entered or written up on the board. Ticket information is not entered correctly by the student, and then the session has expired. So students can modify the settings they want to use during the sign-in process. So when they sign in, there are certain settings they can change, like color contrast, color choices, the print size or the text size, and so on. And then it will verify. It will ask them to verify their information before starting a test. And then this will be any available tests that they are that a test administrator has started. So they will see ones that are available by the test administrator. Then they will further kind of go through that. It will go through the different universal tools that are embedded within the test, like strike through. So if a student is eliminating options on a multiple choice question, they can strike through ones that they've eliminated, so it's easier for them to focus on the answers they're working to prove correct. And then the highlighter and mark for review, those are going to be options that are going to be embedded within tests. They want to make sure the sound check for those specific ones that require sound that was up in the on that manual, or the test administrator manual, which grades and so on need sound, and it was also in the SWAY. So those ones that do will have a voice check or a sound check, and they will verify whether that is working or not before they start the test. And like I said, these are going to be information that a student sees before starting the test, so they get some familiarity with the different options and so on within a test. These are also available when taking a training test too, so you can go through some of these instructions with your students before taking the test. Okay, so it just shows you different types of response types, very similar to last year. They can use this masking tool and so on. Those that have access to different accommodations, so on, will find those in drop-down menus, and then the writing prompt of different versioning. So the reading passages will be similar, where they'll have the option to split those tabs or whatever, to have that tab open in a left side of the screen, and they can kind of have a different view for answering the questions. And most of those options will fall underneath the drop down here. So again, just the types of responses. Also, this will be probably updating as I get access to the science training test. There might be a couple different response types added to this list. So obviously selection, multiple choice, typing or making a selection with an on-screen keypad, place points, lines, or bars on a graph, enter input parameters. When a student is reviewing questions, as they're answering questions, they can mark them for review if they're not sure, if they're not confident about their answer. When they click submit, it will notify them that they marked these for review, or at the end of a testing session, if you're on day 1 and they got through question, let's say 15, and they mark some for review, they would be able to go back to those. It would notify them that they can go back and look at those before the session ends. It'll say verify that they want to submit the test, and then they will go in and put the final submit. Okay, so in that was kind of screenshots from the operational test. But if you want to simulate that, you can do that with the training test. I'm just going to show you the process. We went through it last year. It stays the same as far as doing a training test in a simulation mode for what an operational test would look like. So the training tests, if I go back to the portal here, the person that's going to administer the test will click on Training Test Administration. And this is a prime example of when I was talking about browsers for the test administrator and allowing pop-ups. This is notifying me that I need to allow pop-ups. Okay, so I'm going to do that in my browser window. And it might be different, you know, per browser. If you use Safari or different browsers like that, it might be a different process, but that explains it in that on the portal up on supported browsers right there. So the practice test session, I'm going to say I'm going to deliver an ELA, grade 5, start practice session. The TA or TE or whatever, who is ever administering the test, will retrieve this number, this session ID here, put it up on the board, give it to students. So I've started the session. So then you'll direct your students. If you're doing this on the training test, if you're doing this, the operational test, your students will just open the secure browser. They could open the secure browser and do this in that situation, but if they're just on a computer, they would come here to the portal and they would go to training tests on the home page. And there's a lot of screenshots, like I said, that explain all this. Training test. They go to take the training test. And this is the step that needs to happen in order to for them to be able to sign in like it would be a real test. So they would toggle both of these switches to the off here. And this is where a student would enter their name, first name, and the session ID or the student ID number on their test ticket. And then they would enter that number that I put on the board here, train-EA3-5. They would put that session ID right here. And then when they sign in, the test administrator would approve them. It would say so-and-so is trying to enter the test. You would approve them. And then as they're testing, you would have a screen here that shows progress and so on for each student. And the ability to pause their test and so on. Okay, so like I said, a good idea to kind of take them through that. And if you have new test administrators, to get used to this system. Okay, so this again is just screenshots of what we just did. Again, parts or the last part of this communication here is going to be the score reporting, looking just a little bit at the Airways reporting system and kind of how that functions within there. So now that I have the ability to do that, I'm actually going to go to the portal and depending on your role, like I said, in TIDE, and if a roster has been created for a teacher, you may or may not be able to log in and view these. So under the NDSA assessment, Airways reporting, and it will ask me for my demo institution because those are the only ones that I have access to. Continue. So this would be able to look at any rosters that were created, the results of those. So if a teacher was logging in, they would see their roster information that they were assigned to. And then any test reasons and so on. apply. You go in here, and there's nothing to really view for this at this time. But just take a look at some. There's a lot of different. You can enter a specific student ID to search that student and look at the results from that area. So just just a quick little familiarize yourself with the new system, but it's a good idea to look at that manual and also to go through the guides for the Airways reporting. So because I only have access to so many things here, we can't do a whole lot right now. But when testing, or if you are a TA and you've been assigned a roster, you can go in there and look at results, or the school test coordinators and so on. And then the Lexile and Quantile information, those documents that I mentioned before. If I scroll down here, let's see, where were those again? Oh, they were under students and families. Overview page of the Lexile and Quantile information. So this would explain what those mean. What are those measurements? So if anybody had questions about that, they could read that information, and then they could go into these resources and take a direct look at to what each one kind of refers to. So some resources there that explain kind of what the results mean. So that's as I'm going, as more trainings are happening, and I have time to explore and do more in the reporting system, I'll be updating some screenshots on here to kind of with those processes for the reporting. As always, we have we'll go through in the last part. Also, we'll go through the contacts, who you should call in certain situations, and so on. But lastly, the score reporting, what I was just talking about, the Quantile and Lexile information and the scales are included in these screenshots. So it just tells you what the measurement means. This is what it would look like for a specific student's outcome. In this case, this was NDSA Mathematics Grade 5 in 2017-2018. It would have all of these different measurements for that student's results. So it gives you level 1, 2, 3, 4 efficiency, then gives you that deviation. Okay, so post testing times again. These are, we saw these already in the document, the or the test administrator manual, but this is also a screenshot in this way. So this has the science piece added in there. Just kind of, there were some other documents on the portal that we didn't really go into, or weren't listed up above, and some were and some weren't, but these are just other guides that are available on the portal, and whether or not those are going to be updated or if they're remaining the same. So for example, the test administration manual, that's the one we've looked at. That's a brand new document, January 24th, 2020. Just be aware that some of these are very recent documents. The fact sheet is only a week or so old. The updated test administrator quick guide, that's not, that's the most recent version. That's the version we will use this year. And then the Math Spanish quick guide, there's no changes from last year. And then the writing rubrics, those remain the same from last year. And then the monitoring test progress and data cleanup PowerPoint, which the link lives on the portal. There's no changes also to that document. So just be aware of those, because I know when you kind of go here, you see those dates, and you might be, well, that one hasn't been updated since 2018 or whatever. Well, there hasn't been, that just most of the time just means there hasn't been any changes since the process last time. Okay, so at this point in time, if you want to, you can remain online and ask questions or type them in the chat window. We'll go through the questions, answer any. I know the guys have been really working with you guys in the back end here. I've just been online concentrating on this, but it looks like there's a lot of chats going on answering questions. You can choose to take the TA certification. Here's the contact for the information for the help desk, the NDSA help desk. If you have any questions about specific parts of testing as we're going through this process, as I'm learning more, as things are updating, feel free to reach out to me or any of us team members with Edutech, and also at the Department of Instruction, Department of Public Instruction. Tammy Mayer could answer some questions about different facets of testing and so on. Mainly, I think the alternative tests is Tammy's department, if I can't remember 100%. This information will be updating. There will be a change in this position here, but I'll update that as we go. And then our help desk at Edutech, Jerry would be able to direct you to different points for information. So again, I appreciate all of you for joining us today. If you have any questions, let us know. If there's anything you think we need to add to this or that we forgot, let us know. But other than that, it's up to you what you want to do with the last half hour or so. Thank you very much.